Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Hello and welcome to The Money Factor. I'm Richard Naylor, your host. Today we have another in our series of employment programs, and today's topic is nonverbal interview skills. Our guest, having him back, is Dr. Tom Denham from Careers in Transition. I'm very happy that we're doing another one of these.
Should be a great program today. And thank you for having me back.
Fantastic. You know, we've done, what, 15, 20 of these, and I think we're going to put them all together and package them.
Sell for $19.95.
No, but give them away. Sorry. Let's start out, nonverbal interview skills. You know, when I first was thinking about what show we wanted to do next, and my first impression of nonverbal skills maybe was not correct. What are nonverbal skills?
Nonverbal communication skills are just that. Communicating, not using any kind of language or intonation or words. So it's really body language.
You know, and when I first thought of that, and here was my problem, to be more specific. I think of these books that say, you know, if you hold your arms like this, you're closed, and if you put your hand like this, you're undecided. Sometimes I just do that because it feels good. And I'm not even, you know, so I have a slightly skeptical attitude towards that kind of book. But I think what you're talking about is a little more basic and broader.
Yes and no. I think you've made some good points here. You're right. You know, if I close my hands like this, yes, it might feel comfortable. It might be cold, but it also has that message that I'm standoffish. So I catch myself doing this all the time, and when I do, I realize I'm sending a message to that person. So I'm acutely aware of my communication skills because I'm a career counselor and I deal with clients and people all day long, and I always want to be sending an open and warm message to them. Right. So if, for example, in a counseling session, if I'm like this.
Yeah, that's definitely sends a message.
Somebody may not be aware of what this is saying. So you have to clarify your thoughts and then decide, how do I want to exhibit these in a nonverbal way. So like today, I'm sitting back, I'm relaxed. If I was sitting like this, I'm on the edge of my chair, then I would be sending another message too.
That's good. Right, you know, and you said before, I think on another show, lean forward a little bit, it shows you're interested.
Right.
I'm definitely interested, and I find myself leaning forward, and I wasn't doing it on purpose. You know, so I make this joke. Do you think that some of these books, where they try to help you interpret people, are going a little too far in?
I haven't read many of them, but we say a lot by what we don't say. So I think a lot of these books do have an element of truth to them, and you can speed read people by looking at their nonverbal communication skills. So, for example, if I'm in the supermarket and somebody is walking very slowly, or I'm at the mall and somebody's walking very slow, that's a message that that person does not have high energy, or maybe depressed, or maybe angry, or maybe thinking a lot.
Right. So
you can tell a lot by how a person carries themselves.
Well, I was about to ask you, what can you tell about a person with nonverbal skills? And so let's be more specific then.
So, well, the first thing is that at least half of your communication is body language. I recently read a study that said 55% of communication is body language, 38% is tonation, and then the actual 7% is the actual words. So 93% of communication has very little to do with the words.
But a couple of things you said in there were real general, like intonation.
Right.
Which maybe some of us don't always think of as body language. But it is nonverbal. I don't know if it is.
Well, I would
actually.
classify it as verbal. But yes, by the way I say the word dude or dude.
Right.
Dude!
Or
that says, that, you know,
I'm pretty happy.
there was actually a
I'm pretty
commercial that
happy.
did that.
It's different than
Yeah.
I'm really pretty happy.
Right. So, you know, just when it comes to an interview, those first impressions are critically important. The interview is decided in the first 2 minutes. So that's why they don't get to know you as a person until they get beyond that first 2 minutes. So how are you dressed? Your eye contact, your posture, your facial expressions, smell. I mean, some people will go out in the parking lot before the interview and have a cigarette.
They're nervous, right? Or maybe
yeah.
not. But.
Well, I went to an event just this past week, a Chamber of Commerce event, and I went inside the room and I met this woman and I shook her hand, and she smelled of cigarette smoke. And so immediately I had, you know, a negative reaction to that. Posture, sound, tone, gestures, things like that, all make a difference.
Well, let's go through a few of
And
them.
you've got to be conscious of them too, I think.
As the interviewer and E.
Right.
So, you know, I guess that's kind of a...
And you also, when you're interviewing, you want to mirror what the person's saying. So if they're standing alert, then you want to mirror that kind of behavior.
Now, how do you mean? Do you mean that the interviewer is almost like a mirror?
Yes. So, for example,
On purpose.
So on purpose. So if the interviewer is smiling, I'm going to smile back too. But I will also take the initiative and smile because
Right.
when I do this,
Right. It's better, and then I want to smile too.
yeah, exactly. And you
we
are
all
smiling.
like to smile.
It was a little bit of work on your part, Richard. I know, but now you're smiling.
Well, the timing, you know, the timing. I think that's important too.
So when I'm smiling, I'm getting the other person smiling. They're going to release endorphins, and then they're going to like me more, which is part of the interview, is to get them to like you. It's a popularity contest.
Right. And
So even down in my gut, I may be saying, "Oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to blow this interview." On the surface, I can be smiling and projecting a positive attitude with enthusiasm and energy.
Okay, so let's go through a few things.
Okay.
Where would you start if you were talking to somebody about nonverbal, and not just body language, but nonverbal behavior for the interview? Where do you start?
Well, it really starts when you walk in the door. And
that, you said first impressions.
first
so-
impressions, and even before you get to meet the person that's going to interview you, you're going to walk in the door and you're going to be greeted by a secretary, receptionist, staff member, whoever it is. And so they are also part of the interview process because they are going to talk to their boss about how well you did. So how did you walk into the room? Did you look disheveled? Did you look rushed? How did you carry yourself? How fast were you talking? You know, what did you wear? How did you greet that person? How did you treat that person? So even before the interview starts, the interview has started.
Right,
As soon as
right.
you walk
And
through
so,
that door.
you know, that's not necessarily something I would say is body language, but it's certainly communicating.
Right, you're communicating. So you could walk in there and you know, give them one of these, which would mean I mean business, or I'm standoffish, or I'm better than you. But that's not the impression that you want.
No,
that you want to commit.
no.
Yeah.
And clothing, is that something that you would consider?
Absolutely.
Because it sends a signal, right?
It does send a signal. So for example, if you're going to go apply for an accounting firm, you're going to wear something more conservative. If you wear something more conservative, what you're saying is, I'm taking this process seriously. So if you are mismatched, though, you go and work for a technology company where there's no coat and tie and there's no dress code whatsoever, and you come in with a three-piece suit on, you're going to be completely overdressed. You're sending a message. Well, you're also sending a message that you didn't do your homework too.
Right.
You didn't
So
research
the
that.
office comment might be, well, here comes Wall Street.
Right, right. And the other impression that you get is, this person's not going to fit in here.
Which is the basic,
He's not one of us.
right.
And maybe that person hasn't even spoken yet, but they've spoken with what they wear.
There's a wonderful Colonie film where a person gets dressed up, their family saves, they put all their money together. The whole village comes together to get this guy, and he's sacrificed, he's selling things, he gets dressed up, he goes and gets the interview, and the guy gives it to somebody else. And it's like, why? And the guy says, well, because you obviously don't need the job, and I could see that he really needed it. So that's like the wrong way to go, but that's not the way life is generally.
Right. Most people, many times, don't dress appropriately for an interview.
That's amazing.
They underdress. I mean, we do live in an area of casual dress, but you know, when you dress appropriately, you're taking the interview seriously. And that is something that you can control. A lot of these nonverbal interview behaviors you can control. You can't control how they make their decision. You can't control the fact that it's a terrible job market or that 10 other people are being interviewed. You don't have control over those things. You have control over your resume, your cover letter, and how you handle yourself in the interview.
And you don't want to mess that up.
That's right. That's right. It's like American Idol. You get one shot. That's it.
Now, you already did smiles, but what else can you do wrong in terms of facial?
I don't know if I do something like
this.
this.
Oh, no, don't do that.
Now, if you ever see a politician, if they're a good politician, and Bill Clinton started this too, is that they will hold their hand like this. They will make a point and they'll go like this. Because nobody wants to be pointed at.
I could feel a big difference there.
I could say that's a very good point.
Now
That's
you're Italian.
I'm not pointing.
Right.
That's an excellent point.
Right.
But if I say, this is don't do this.
That's what the parents did when we were little.
Right. So it sends a message.
Anything else with that? Because that was a hand gesture, but facial gesture, be a smile. Obviously, a frown is no good.
You have to be really cognizant of your reaction to what they say. So if they say something and then you kind of roll your eyes like that, that's no good. Also, you might. You know, if somebody said something, you know, just completely inappropriate, you might go like that. You always want to be thinking in the back of your head, what is the message I want to convey with my communication skills? What is the message? Am I there to entertain? Am I there to educate? Am I there to inform? Am I there to sell, persuade, be liked? What's my goal?
Now, you come in for an interview. You have your hands at your side. You walk over and shake hands. How do you conduct yourself meeting someone?
Let's say you've walked in the door. You've met the secretary receptionist. They've greeted you. You give them a bear hug. No, maybe not. Bad communication skills on the first interview.
Unless it's a rock band, maybe. Or a football team.
And then you go over and you sit down at the table. You're going to be relaxed. Maybe you're going to just be thinking about how you want that first 5 to 10 minutes to go. The person comes out of their office. You're going to stand up straight. And the very first thing that you're going to do is smile, go over, shake their hand, restate their name, and tell them it's nice to meet you. So I would go over to you and I would shake your hand and I'd say, Richard, very nice to meet you, Tom Denham, something like that.
And do you start talking right away, or what do you do? It's a dance. Okay.
It's a dance. And you're not leading this dance.
Okay, that sounds good.
So you're going to let that person lead the dance. Now, if the person is skilled, they'll lead the dance and you're there just to follow. Sometimes people are not skilled at interviewing, and even though they may be leading the dance and maybe not leading the dance in the direction that you want it to go in or whether it should go in, you will have to get in there and interject and make sure you get your 3 to 5 key points across.
So that suggests that you shouldn't just be aware of your own body language. You need to be reading
other people's body language.
The other person or people.
So if I'm interviewing you, Richard, and I'm
looks like you're hiding.
I also may be stressed. I also may be doubtful.
Oh, don't look at your watch.
I just looked
don't
at
we
my
have
watch,
time for me?
which means I'm clock watching. I may be falling asleep, and I have to keep my head up by holding my hand here.
So it sounds like time for me to say, did you already decide on this job? Except that would be a really stupid thing to say.
Yeah, you know what? When you have your hand up like this, it means you're thinking. It also might mean you have a headache. Could mean a lot of things. Now, if I went like this, I might be pensive.
Looks like you're thinking about what to ask.
Or I could be, you know, it depends on what the expression on my face too. You know, if I was.
Yeah, I wouldn't want you to be laughing looking at my resume.
If I was like.
Pretty good. So it looks like you're impressed.
No.
No?
No, not really.
I was hoping.
Now, if I was like this, then I would.
Okay, a little smile would be good.
Yeah, right.
Okay, and then
This could mean I'm interested. It could also mean I'm bored.
so it's really better than to
I try to keep my hands
yourself,
away
right?
from my face because, if I'm with somebody, I could be like that means I'm engaged. I'm interested.
I once did an interview with somebody who kept flipping their skirt, and that was very distracting. I didn't think that was a good thing. No, no tapping either.
Or sometimes I'll have a client that will move their foot back and forth.
Nervous?
Nervous, usually. Yeah. And most of the time they're not conscious that they're doing these things.
Talking too fast?
Talking too fast, that's a verbal communication skill. But you have to think about what's going on inside your mind. If you're nervous, you're not settled, you're not grounded, you're not centered, things are going to manifest themselves in nonverbal skills or communication.
Now, you talked about intonation. That sounds pretty tricky because the other person maybe hasn't spoken a lot yet.
You're going to let them talk first. There's a communication technique called LVAC, which means listen, validate, ask, comment. I'll repeat that again.
Yeah, please.
LVAC, listen, validate, ask, comment. And it was developed by a psychiatrist in Clifton Park by the name of Dr. Anthony Ferrioli. And he wrote a book called LVAC Nation. And if you use LVAC, you will ace the interview. So, or in any form of communication. So the very first thing you do is listen. Your impulsive nature is to just go in and start talking, and you have to resist that. So you listen, and then you validate that person. You said you heard what they were saying, and you agree, and then you ask so that you're engaged, and at the end you comment. But most of the time, when we're communicating in a dysfunctional way, you say something, I comment on it.
It sounds like
I don't listen to you.
Right, right.
And then the problem is it's comment, 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 comment.
And we're not getting anywhere.
Nobody's listening, nobody's validating, nobody's asking.
Right.
But you have to suspend your own agenda and control the impulse to want to say something.
Right, because we want to look good, so we want to impress them, so we want to speak and say good things. On the other hand,
sometimes impressing them means not
letting
letting them speak. Yeah.
Say it's a great conversation we just had, even though you only spoke 20% of the time.
I think it was Dale Carnegie that said, if you'll show great interest in people if you'll let them talk.
Right. Yeah. And that is one of the hardest things to do.
And people will talk about themselves if you give them that opportunity.
So let's see, we've come in the give and take, thinking of the dynamic back and forth. They're going to be asking questions. Give me an example of a very creative thing that you did in a past job. Now, I don't know, do you smile when you do that?
I'm always smiling.
How do you talk? And
I'm always
what can
smiling.
go wrong? Something like that.
Well, again, the more you can smile, I tell people you need to smile 25% more than you normally do.
And that may not be much.
That may not be much. I'll just give you a quick example. I have a waiting room and then I have a consultation room. So if I come out of my consultation room and I'm just about to meet a person for the very first time, as soon as I walk out there, before I do that, I will put a smile on my face, so that is the very first thing that they see, is a smile. That is their very first impression of me. The smile is warm, it's friendly, it's welcoming, it's trusting. Then I shake their hand. I spend about a nanosecond and I look right into their eyes and I say, Richard, very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Now, I would assume that when you did that, you would not be smiling when I came out, because now it doesn't have anything to do with me. You're just happy. You would want to start smiling when you see the other person, because
I smile like this as I come out, and then I open up into a
well,
big
there's an
smile.
Anticipation of
right.
you're
rather than being like
expecting you.
Rather than having a sourpuss and then all of a sudden smiling.
Okay.
Because they will actually see me as soon as I come out.
Right.
And so I want to be making the movement in the positive direction.
And they'll think that you're smiling because you're greeting them.
Right. Now, so for example, if I had a really difficult client and I came out and I looked like I was upset or something like that, that's the first thing that they're going to see. And they deserve more than that.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Right, because if you're really in the present, you're not thinking about the guy that cut you off on the way in or anything else.
I always try to smile in every situation. You get back what you give. So if I'm constantly smiling, people will mirror that, and they will smile back, and then they'll open up, and then they'll crack jokes, and then I'll crack a joke, and then you have a bond.
Okay.
And then you can continue to build a relationship that way.
Now, I think a smile, that's a good place to ask another question about that. You want to be sincere, though, so all this can sound to somebody like, well, this is so artificial. Aren't you real? I mean, you're just thinking about how to manipulate the situation. You're not a real person anymore.
Well, the way I look at it is everyone is a resource. Everyone can teach me something, or I could teach them something. So I think people deserve, especially in our age today, people deserve to be treated with respect and dignity. And it's amazing. Even at places like the supermarket, I will always smile for who's ever at the cash register, and you'll be amazed what you get back. And many times, they've had 15 customers that have not smiled to them. And so when they get somebody that smiles, they will smile back. I'll crack a joke. They start laughing. Now you've released endorphins again, and you've made somebody's day. It hasn't cost you a dime to do it. I always smile because that's how I'm feeling all the time.
Well, that must be nice.
Spreading the joy. It doesn't cost me any money.
Okay. Let's take that one a little further. I mean, because I'm still not satisfied with sincerity. I mean, could you go further in that? I want to know that the person is sincere, and we don't want people to think that you can be a fake. You respect them, and so
right.
I guess maybe I can satisfy myself somehow by saying, are you saying that you value them, and so why wouldn't you act this way?
Of course, I value everyone. So because everyone can teach me something. My daughter can teach me something. My 75-year-old mother can teach me something. All my clients have been fantastic teachers for me. So what's the alternative to smiling?
I guess being ineffective. I mean, people will come to you and look for help because
right.
they're having trouble with interviews.
Right.
Maybe they're nervous. Maybe they're giving off all kinds of vibes that they don't want to. So, when I turn it around, I'm trying to answer this question for myself, I guess, and not be insincere. Why would you act like a klutz? Is that who you really are? Or why would you give somebody the impression that you're lazy or not interested or defensive?
Because it takes a little bit of work to get the reaction that you want from people. So, for example, really why I smile at people is because I want to be smiled at. But it starts with me.
The golden rule here.
Right. So, but other people, they may be overwhelmed by their thoughts of negativity and depression that it manifests itself in their nonverbal communication skills. Regardless of how I'm feeling, I always smile because that's my mechanism to get what I want back, which is another smile.
Right.
So every time you see me,
yeah,
I'll be smiling.
Well, we've had a lot of fun conversations.
Yeah, and now you're smiling.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've had a lot of laughs because I just keep smiling. And now you're laughing.
There we go.
So especially for the interview, I think it's very very important to do that without being silly or insincere or disingenuous.
Right.
I mean, and certainly there are times, whether it's through this interview or through an interview, that you are going to be serious. But the more you can smile, the more you're going to feel good about yourself. You're going to make them feel good. You're also going to relax yourself, and that's going to give you a better answer for each question that you're going to get.
So maybe a different way to look at it, instead of saying I'm being artificial or I'm trying to act like somebody I'm not, is I don't really want to do things that are destructive. I certainly didn't set out to be that person that looks impatient or nervous. And so I need to understand myself and not be that way.
Well, one of the things I do for my clients is a videotape mock interview. So
Awesome.
that they get to see these nonverbal communication skills, and oftentimes they are shocked by the kind of messages that they send out there. So, for example, they'll say things like, "Oh, I'm very energetic and I'm enthusiastic," and then it shows up on tape, and they're like, they can't believe
Ooh, wow.
who that person is. And I encourage them to do this so that they can get the kinks out in my office and not out in the real interview situation.
I wonder if you could say one of your goals is to be yourself at the interview.
You have to be yourself at your best. I tell people,
That's nice.
don't be Dr. Tom at the interview. Just be yourself at your best. I tell people, pretend it's like your first day on the job.
I think that really answers the question for me better about am I being fake by studying what kind of messages I'm sending. I really just want to be myself at my best, and that's
yourself
a great thing.
at your very best. Pretend it's your first day on the job, and that you have this job, and you're excited to be there. You're a little nervous, but it's already yours.
So most of the things we're bringing to this are probably not ourselves at our best because we are nervous.
Right.
It's like, I guess in baseball, when the hitter stops thinking about it and just hits the ball, now everything comes together.
Right. Your thoughts eventually become manifestations. So if in your head you're nervous, it's gonna come out that you're nervous. So sometimes I will give a speech, and for a brief moment I'll be nervous, and then I'll think, nah, it's a piece of cake. I'll be fine, and then I go out there and I act the way I want to get a reception for that.
Now, did you do as well the first time you did a speech?
Oh, no.
So I think
I've been a career counselor for 20 years,
Right.
And I look back on my first years in career counseling. I thought, oh my gosh, who the heck is that?
Yeah, I remember a colleague of mine advising another person who just didn't get a job, and telling them that, but it was practice, and so it was an opportunity.
I don't think people are really aware of the nonverbal communication skills that they send out there. I often will look at people and I'll say, wow, that person is just not happy. Just by the way they carry themselves, by the way they walk, by the way they dress, by the way they keep themselves, by the way they interact with other people. I mean, sometimes I feel like, especially in my office, it's like a laboratory where people get to experiment with their emotions.
How do you mean?
It's a safe place where people can just let things loose.
So the clients, in other words.
The clients, yeah.
I see.
Or just get to be, they get to feel with wherever they're feeling. And you see that out. Just go to a baseball game one of these days, or go over to the Valley Cats and see them, and just walk around, and you'll see people, and you can speed read people. You can see the ones that are put together and the ones that are not.
So that's good advice, I think. If you look at other people and try to think about how you are reacting to them and how you're reading them, you can kind of see, is this a person I would hire? So you put yourself in the interviewer's place for a second so you can understand that.
Yeah, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. Interviewing from the recruiter's perspective, I've written about this on my blog, and you've got to step back and say, how am I really being perceived, or what are the type of person that I'd want to hire?
Do you have any tips or help for people, any advice? Everybody has different problems, but how do you get this feedback? Are we too nervous to ask for it, or are we ashamed, or?
I think most of it's buried in the subconscious. So the more of that you can bring to the surface, and the more aware, the better off you're going to be going to work with a career counselor such as myself, or a therapist, or somebody in human resources, or a friend that can give you this kind of honest feedback. I think is very helpful. But a lot of the time we're just not even aware that we're doing these things.
Do you think it helps if somebody would try to do a mock interview with another person?
Oh, absolutely. I encourage people to either work with me in a videotape practice interview, or with a friend or somebody they trust, or even a spouse. Spouses aren't always the best, but
right. It could be the
because they're
opposite.
Emotionally involved. But
and we take things so personally because it is, and it can
right.
seem personal that way.
That's right. That's right. So, but yeah, absolutely must practice. 3 rules of interviewing are practice, practice, practice.
Okay. Any other advice for people?
I would say be aware of your nonverbal communication skills. Why don't you just observe how you carry yourself for 1 week?
One more question.
Sure.
I was thinking about eye contact.
Yes.
You don't want to be threatening. You don't know whether you should stare at somebody, look at the floor. How do you deal with that?
Your eyes are an indicator of what's going on in your mind. So if I'm looking all over the place like this, I'm scattered in my mind. You do want to have good, positive eye contact. You don't want to turn it into a staring contest.
Now, can you look away? And that's okay?
You certainly can look. Looking away is fine, but I find a lot of people they don't have very good eye contact. They will talk like this, or they'll be distracted by this, and they might not even be aware that they're doing that.
I've talked to people and they seem to look someplace else,
Yeah.
and I start wondering, are you there, or am I here?
If you and I are at a networking function, and I'm looking at you, and then all of a sudden
You start glancing over your shoulder.
and I'm looking over here, I'm sending you a message. The
Like,
nonverbal
is there
message
somebody
is
more important to talk to?
somebody better than Richard.
Right. Okay, so pay attention and
Think
don't
about
be
the other
afraid of
person.
the person.
Yeah, think about the
Okay.
other person. What is the best communication skills that I can give you right now instead of that person over there?
Right. So you really, and that goes back to the first thing you said about it's a dance.
It's a dance, and I value our relationship. So you're going to be the most important thing to me right now, and these are the nonverbal and verbal communication skills I'm going to use for you.
And if we're going to be working together, that's pretty important.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me,
Great
Richard.
show.
Great show.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show, that you tune in again next time, and that you have a great week. Take care.
Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.